These are the 8 richest families that own New Jersey, and what they actually control is genuinely surprising. We've got a family of Holocaust survivors who went from building starter homes in the suburbs to owning an NFL franchise. One man whose decision to move house put a visible dent in the entire state budget. And at number 1, a dynasty whose products are sitting in your bathroom cabinet right now, whether you've thought about it or not. Let's get into it. Number 8. The Hovnanian family. Let's kick things off with a family that arrived in New Jersey as refugees and ended up building tens of thousands of the houses people actually live in. Kevork Hovnanian was Armenian, and his family's story runs through the diaspora that scattered after the Armenian genocide, eventually landing them in Iraq. Then, political conditions there turned hostile, and the Hovnanians got out again. Kevork arrived in America in the early 1960s with an engineering background and not a great deal else. In 1959, he and his brothers had started building, and what became Hovnanian Enterprises turned into one of the largest home builders in the United States, headquartered in New Jersey ever since. And I want to make the case for why home building belongs on a list like this, because it's the least glamorous industry imaginable, and it is enormous. Think about what it actually takes. You have to buy raw land years before you need it, get it approved through a planning process designed to say no, put in the roads and the sewers and the electricity before you've sold a single house, and then build and sell hundreds of homes at a margin that can evaporate the moment interest rates move. It is a business with brutal cycles, and Hovnanian has been through all of them, including the 2008 housing collapse which killed off an enormous number of American builders. They came out the other side. His son Ara Hovnanian runs the company now, and the family name is all over Armenian-American philanthropy and New Jersey institutions. A refugee family that fled twice ended up putting a roof over a very large number of American heads. The Hovnanians built starter homes. Another family that arrived here with nothing built the same thing and then went and bought a football team with the proceeds. Number 7. The Wilf family. Joseph and Harry Wilf survived the Holocaust. That is the beginning of this story, and everything after it should be read against that fact. The brothers came out of Poland, made it to the United States, and settled in New Jersey, and in the mid-1950s they started building houses. They called it garden homes, and the timing was as good as timing gets, because post-war New Jersey was exploding. Returning servicemen with government-backed mortgages needed somewhere to live. Farmland was turning into suburbs at extraordinary speed, and the Wilfs built into that wave for decades. The family expanded into commercial property as well, and today the operation is one of the larger privately held real estate groups in the country, run out of Short Hills. Then in 2005 came the part everybody knows them for, because a group led by Ziggy Wilf bought the Minnesota Vikings for a reported $600 million. And they've had to fight for it. The Vikings needed a new stadium, and the resulting years-long argument with Minnesota politics over public funding was long, loud, and occasionally brutal, before US Bank Stadium finally opened in 2016 with a substantial private contribution from the family. That franchise is now worth several $billion, and estimates of the Wilf family fortune generally sit somewhere in the region of $5 billion. Though as always with privately held real estate, treat every number in this video as an estimate. There's a detail I keep coming back to though. When the Vikings opened that stadium, the family made a point of the Wilf family's history being present in the story rather than tidied away. 2 brothers who survived the worst thing that has ever happened in Europe built houses in New Jersey, and their children own an NFL team. That's the whole thing in one sentence. The Wilfs built out toward the suburbs. One family looked at the Jersey City waterfront, which at the time was derelict, and decided to build an entire city on it. Number 6. The Lefrick family. Stand in Lower Manhattan, look west across the Hudson, and the wall of glass towers you're looking at in Jersey City is substantially the work of one family. I should be straight with you here, because the Lefricks are historically a New York family, 4 generations out of Queens, and their origins are firmly on that side of the river. But their single biggest project is on this one, and it is genuinely enormous. It's called Newport, and it sits on the Jersey City waterfront on roughly 600 acres of land that used to be rotting rail yards and abandoned dockage. The Hudson waterfront had been the freight and shipping backbone of the region, and when containerization moved all of that elsewhere, It left behind an industrial wasteland directly across from the most expensive real estate on Earth. Everybody could see the view. Almost nobody wanted to touch the ground. The Refugee did, starting in the mid-80s, and they've spent 40 years building it out into a full district with residential towers, offices, retail, and a transport connection into Manhattan, essentially manufacturing a new city center from scratch. And the numbers behind the family are serious, with estimates generally putting them in the region of $4 to $5 billion, built on a portfolio running to tens of thousands of apartments. But the reason this belongs in a video about who owns New Jersey is what it did to the state's economics. Jersey City went from a punchline to one of the fastest-growing cities in the region, with a skyline, a financial services workforce, and property values that would have been unthinkable in 1980. One family's decision to bet on a derelict waterfront rewrote the fortunes of an entire city. The Refugee bet on land nobody wanted. So what happens when a family bets on something considerably more volatile than dirt, and does it starting from a kosher butcher's shop in Asbury Park? Speaking of seeing value where everyone else sees a problem, there's a program someone on our team has been curious about called the Billionaire Brain Wave. It's a simple 7-minute audio built around theta brainwave research, the deep focus brain state linked to where big creative ideas come from. You put on headphones once a day, usually with your morning coffee, and that's the whole routine. It's a one-time $39. It comes with bonus guides on money habits and investing basics, and there's a 90-day money-back guarantee. So testing it costs you nothing if it's not for you. If you're watching on your TV, pause and scan the QR code on screen with your phone camera, or tap the first link in the description. Now, back to an empire that began at the very bottom of the ladder. Number 5. The Hess family. Morris Hess was a kosher butcher who emigrated from Lithuania, and when that didn't work out, he took a job delivering fuel oil around Asbury Park, New Jersey. His son Leon was born there in 1914 and started out doing exactly the same thing, delivering oil. One truck, local customers, in the years after the Great Depression when nobody in that part of the state had any money at all. What he built from that is one of the great American energy stories. Leon Hess worked out that the money wasn't in delivering the fuel, it was in controlling it further up the chain, so he built an oil terminal in New Jersey, and by the late 1950s he was building his own refinery. Then in 1969, he pulled off the move that made the company a giant, acquiring Amerada Petroleum, one of the largest crude producers in the country, and merging it into what became Amerada Hess. And if you've driven the East Coast, you've been inside his business without thinking about it, because the green and white Hess stations were everywhere. So were the Hess toy trucks, which the company started selling in 1964, and which became a genuine Christmas institution for millions of American families, sold at the pumps at close to cost because Leon Hess wanted them to be something ordinary people could actually afford. He also bought into the New York Jets in 1963, eventually taking full control, and in 1984 he moved the team out of New York entirely and into Giant Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Hold on to that because it matters at the end of this video. Leon Hess died in 1999. His son John ran the company for the next quarter century. And then it ended. In July of 2025, Chevron completed its acquisition of Hess Corporation, a deal driven largely by Hess's enormous offshore discoveries in Guyana. And John Hess joined the Chevron board. After roughly 90 years, a company that started with a man delivering oil around Asbury Park was absorbed into one of the biggest oil majors on the planet. The Hess family eventually sold their empire into a bigger one. Another New Jersey dynasty never sold anything at all and quietly ended up owning a slice of one of the most visited websites on Earth. Number 4. The Newhouse family. In 1912, a 17-year-old was handed control of a struggling newspaper in Bayonne, New Jersey, essentially because his boss couldn't be bothered with it. That was Samuel Irving Newhouse, and the paper was the Bayonne Times. He turned it around. Then he bought another paper, then another. And what he assembled over the following decades became Advance Publications, one of the largest and most private media companies in America. The family's holdings are genuinely striking once you list them. Condé Nast, which means Vogue, The New Yorker, Vanity Fair, GQ, Wired, and Architectural Digest, a large newspaper group, cable and broadcast interests over the years. And then there's the part almost nobody realizes, which is that Advance is the largest shareholder in Reddit, a position it took back in 2006 when Reddit was a tiny site nobody had heard of, and which became worth billions when Reddit went public in 2024. Sit with that. A family fortune that began with a teenager running a newspaper in Bayonne in 1912 now includes one of the biggest positions in one of the most visited websites on Earth. Estimates of the family's wealth generally run into the tens of billions, though Advance is private and the true figure is genuinely unknowable from the outside, which is precisely how they've always liked it. The Newhouses have historically been extremely reluctant to talk publicly about anything. Now, in fairness, the family has been New York-centered for a very long time, and Advance is not run from New Jersey today. But every bit of it grew out of a 17-year-old in Bayonne being handed a failing local paper. The Newhouses turned a Bayonne newspaper into a media empire. But one man on this list managed something rarer still, because he became so significant to New Jersey's finances that when he moved house, the state treasury noticed. Number 3. David Tepper. This one isn't a dynasty, it's one man, and he's here because of a story that tells you something genuinely remarkable about how concentrated wealth actually works. David Tepper grew up in Pittsburgh, worked his way through school, and eventually founded a hedge fund called Appaloosa Management, which he ran out of Short Hills, New Jersey. And he became famous in finance for one specific talent, which was buying things when everybody else was too frightened to. His firm made enormous returns buying distressed debt in the middle of the 2009 financial crisis, when serious people genuinely believed the American banking system might not survive. His fortune is now generally estimated in the region of $20 billion, which makes him comfortably the wealthiest individual with roots in this video. Then, in 2015, he moved to Florida. And here's the part that people in New Jersey still talk about, because state budget officials openly discuss the fact that losing a single taxpayer could measurably affect state revenue projections. One man. Not a factory closing, not an industry leaving. One person changing his address, and the treasury of a state of 9 million people had to account for it. That is a genuinely startling illustration of how top-heavy modern wealth has become, and it caused a real argument in Trenton about tax policy that hasn't fully gone away. He's since bought the Carolina Panthers, paying a reported $2.25 billion in 2018, which was a record for an NFL franchise at the time, and he also owns Charlotte FC. One man's change of address moved a state's numbers. Now let's talk about the two families that have never gone anywhere, starting with the one that is technically the richest in New Jersey. Number 2. The Dorrance family. Right, let's be honest with each other about the ranking here. By Forbes' own accounting, the Dorrance family is the wealthiest family in New Jersey, estimated at around $17 billion and placed roughly 23rd among the richest families in America. They edge out the family we're finishing with. So if this were purely a net worth list, they'd be number 1, and there'd be no argument. And the fortune comes from soup. In 1897, a young chemist named John Thompson Dorrance took a job at a struggling canning company in Camden, New Jersey, reportedly for a very modest wage. He had a doctorate in chemistry from Germany, which at the time was the best chemistry education in the world, and he had turned down university teaching posts to go and work in a cannery, which his family thought was insane. Then he solved a problem nobody else had cracked, which was how to remove most of the water from soup and can the concentrate. That sounds trivial. It was transformative, because the water is the heavy part, and shipping water across a country is enormously expensive. By condensing it, Dorrance cut the shipping weight and the price dramatically, which meant a can of soup went from being a luxury item to something an ordinary household could keep in the cupboard. He bought the company outright in 1914, and Campbell Soup became one of the most recognizable brands in the world, to the point that Andy Warhol's paintings of the cans became some of the most famous images in modern art. The company is still headquartered in Camden, and the family still holds a very substantial stake, with multiple descendants historically sitting on the board. The portfolio now includes Pepperidge Farm, Prego, and V8, and generates billions in annual revenue. So a chemist who could have had a comfortable academic career instead went to a cannery in New Jersey and worked out how to take the water out of soup, and his descendants have been billionaires for a century. The Dorrances have the bigger number, but there is one family left, and theirs is the only fortune on this list that you have physically touched today. Number 1. The Johnson family. Go and open your bathroom cabinet. Band-Aids. Baby shampoo. Tylenol. Neutrogena. Listerine, historically. Dental floss, which they essentially commercialized. There is a genuine chance that several things in that cabinet trace back to one family and one company founded in New Brunswick, New Jersey in 1886. Johnson & Johnson was started by Robert Wood Johnson I alongside his brothers James and Edward Mead, and the founding insight was medical rather than commercial. Surgery at the time was appallingly dangerous, not because surgeons were bad, but because nobody had properly accepted germ theory yet, and people were dying of infection after operations that had otherwise gone fine. The Johnsons built a business around sterile surgical dressings, which sounds mundane and was genuinely revolutionary. From there came the first commercial first aid kits, then the Band-Aid, then baby powder, then an enormous pharmaceutical operation, and today the company's market value runs into the hundreds of billions of dollars. Forbes estimates the extended Johnson family fortune at around $16 billion, which puts them just behind the Dorrances, and the money is spread across a large number of descendants rather than concentrated. The most visible of them is Robert Wood Johnson IV, known universally as Woody, born in New Brunswick in 1947. Bloomberg has put his personal fortune around $10.9 billion, though estimates vary widely depending on who's counting, and his assets run through a family office called the Johnson Company. He served as U.S. Ambassador to the United Kingdom from 2017 to 2021, and in 2025 he bought a substantial stake in Crystal Palace in the Premier League. But here's the detail that closes this whole video, and it's why I asked you to remember Leon Hess. In 2000, Woody Johnson bought the New York Jets for $635 million, and he bought them from the estate of Leon Hess. Think about what that actually is. The son of a Lithuanian kosher butcher built an oil empire out of Asbury Park and bought a football team. When he died, the great-grandson of the man who made sterile bandages in New Brunswick bought it off his estate. Two New Jersey dynasties, both started by immigrants or the sons of immigrants, handing the same franchise between them across a century, and that team still plays its home games in East Rutherford, on New Jersey soil, because Leon Hess moved it there in 1984. The Jets are now valued at over $8 billion. So that's the answer to the title. The richest family in New Jersey by pure arithmetic sells you soup. But the family that actually reaches into your house every single day, into the cabinet where you keep the plasters and the baby shampoo and the painkillers, is the one that started by trying to stop people dying of infection in 1886 and never left New Jersey. And those were the 8 richest families that own New Jersey. Notice the pattern running through nearly all of them, though. A kosher butcher's son delivering fuel oil, Armenian refugees who'd already fled twice, 2 brothers who survived the Holocaust, a 17-year-old handed a failing newspaper in Bayonne, a chemist who took a job at a cannery when he could have been a professor. New Jersey is the state people drive through on their way somewhere else, and it turns out an extraordinary number of American fortunes were built by people who stopped here instead. So which one got you? The brothers who went from surviving Europe to owning an NFL team, the one man whose move to Florida showed up in a state budget, or the family whose bandages are in your bathroom right now? Drop it in the comments and tell me which state you want us to dig into next, because we'll go wherever you send us. Hit that like button and subscribe to Global Status, because we break down empires like this every single week.